Gran Turismo 7. You done effed it up, Sony and PlayStation. That's all I can say. This is a game that is a very, very competent driving simulator and had all of the potential to make waves across the driving game community, but instead the game is making headlines because of its nefarious microtransactions additions that has seen the user score plummet to a measly 2.4, and you can see here a major discrepancy between the user score and the meta score. That's because reviewers got a version of the game that isn't representative of what it is now after updates reduced the amount of progression as well as introduced microtransactions that are far more egregious than anything we have ever seen in past Gran Turismo games. And you can see right here what the reviews are saying scrolling down. Game requires always online for single player. Oh yeah, I'll get to that in a bit. And servers are constantly down for maintenance. And you can see right here 125 out of 128 people found this to be a helpful user review. So the high ratio of people approving of these reviews really highlights that this is a widespread criticism. Sad that Polyphony Digital has gone the way of Rockstar and EA. They force online-only connection, even for single player, in order to keep tabs on their most prized aspect of the game, credits and microtransactions. The game has seen an update to drastically reduce race payouts, and the promise of being able to sell your extra cars has been cut from the game. Oh yeah, that is 100% true. I'll address that too. All actions to entice the player to spend real-world money on in-game currency. Polyphony used to be my favorite developer, but it's clear that top-down orders from Sony have changed their priorities from consumer enjoyment to shareholders' bottom line. I couldn't have put it better myself, and many of these other reviews essentially echo similar sentiments. Now let's dive deeper into the story and the order of events where Gran Turismo went from glorified new racing game to one of the worst examples of a AAA game that completely ruined its potential. Here's an article from back in March 4th, 2022 from Video Games Chronicle, whose headline reads, Gran Turismo 7's microtransactions are live and GT Sports $5 cars now cost $40. Yup. From previous games, which did include microtransactions, you'll see price hikes that can go up to 8 times what the price once used to be, and then that on top of the diminished earnings of progression and rewards throughout GT7, and you've got a situation where it takes more grind and more money than ever to fulfill your car fantasies in a game that's all about fulfilling your car fantasies. And here's an important bit. During the review period, these microtransactions were inaccessible, so it was not possible to tell how much credits would cost when the game was released. Now that it's out, however, the full prices for these microtransactions have been revealed. It's the same old technique of having different packages of microtransactions at different price points. 100,000 credits will cost you $2.50. 250,000 credits will cost you $5. 750,000 credits, $10. And 2 million credits, $20. So in the best case scenario, 100,000 credits equals $1. That's sort of the relative equivalence. Video Games Chronicle's article continues. Gran Turismo Sport let players buy individual cars as microtransactions, with the vast majority of cars costing between $1 and $5 each. So there were microtransactions back then, but it was nowhere near as egregious as it is now. This is no longer the case in Gran Turismo 7. Now a Porsche 919 Hybrid 16, which can be bought for $3 in Gran Turismo Sport, can only be bought for 3 million credits, which would require the player to spend at least $40 going by the package pricing here. And the most cost-effective way would be to buy 2 of this package, so you'd have to spend at least $40 for this one car. And there are plenty of other comparisons here. The Aston Martin Vulcan 16 cost $5 in GT Sport. It costs roughly $40 in GT7. The McLaren P1 GTR 16, $5 in GT Sport, roughly $40 in GT7. And then the Audi R18 TDI 11, $3 in GT Sport, now roughly $40 in GT7. utterly disgusting and ridiculous. And notice how they stagger the pricing of the microtransactions packages in relation to the cost of buying certain things. So for example, right here, if you want to buy a vehicle that's 1 million credits, there is no option to buy 1 million credits. So you do have to spend $20 here, or you have to spend $10 here and then $5 here for a grand total of $15, instead of just being able to spend a quantity that saves you some money while netting you exactly 1 million credits. You have to spend at least $15 instead of being able to spend $10 for the exact amount of credits you need. Video Games Chronicle highlights this too. You'll have to buy 750,000 and 250,000 credits for a total of $15, or 2 million credits for $20. And then, as if all that wasn't enough, there is the aspect of the game where you can upgrade your cars, and yes, you can buy those with premium currency as well. Every car also has a host of upgrade parts, all of which cost credits too. And car upgrades monetization is also at its most egregious in Gt7. And then the cherry on top is that there are cars that can be incredibly expensive. Some legendary cars will be costing up to 20 million credits. That's roughly $200 for a single car. And here's the rub. It's bad enough that Gt7 increases the cost, the real world money cost of cars by the amount that it does. And it's bad enough that upgrading cars is also more costly than ever. But on top of all of that, they also made it so that it's harder to earn cars in Gt7 through gameplay by increasing the amount of grind required, as reported here by Video Games Chronicle on March 17th, 2022, via an article whose headline reads, "Following microtransactions criticism, Gran Turismo 7's latest patch makes it harder to earn cars," and you'll find the details scrolling down below. Some of the more high-end cars in Gt7 are so expensive that they require a significant amount of gameplay to obtain enough credits to buy them via normal means, with some cars potentially taking dozens of hours of racing. And that's for a single car, mind you. Other cars, most notably high-value legendary cars, also rotate in and out of the various shops in the game, a tactic that could be perceived as the FOMO effect, essentially get the car now before it's gone forever or gone for a very long time, and you miss out on this one-time or once-in-a-blue-moon deal. And then on top of that, a convenient feature from previous entries is strangely missing in this one. Unlike in previous games in the series, players are unable to sell their cars to earn credits. I wonder why that is. Simply playing the game's races over and over is the only in-game option to earn these cars. This is just cynical levels of trying to lure players into the game's microtransaction store by playing with their emotions, by playing on their impatience, and by intentionally making it an insufferable experience to get these cars through gameplay. The article then concludes by spotlighting just how much credits earnings were nerfed in parallel to the introduction of the game's ridiculously greedy microtransactions. You can see right here just how many of the credits earnings were adjusted by, a third or half, even more at times. Here's one race that used to give out 50,000 credits and now only gives out 30,000. Here's one that used to give out 65,000, nerfed to 30,000, 65,000 to 40,000, 65 to 40, 65 to 35, 65 to 45, 75 to 50, 75 to 50, etc. I mean, you can see it for yourself. I'm not going to sit here and list out all of these, but yeah, just nerfs across the board. The internet already did the math, by the way, namely gtplanet.net in this post highlights just how many hours of gameplay it take to earn some of the most expensive cars in the game. Here is the time taken to buy just one example of the most expensive vehicles in each game, and you can see right here, Gran Turismo 7 is only second to Gran Turismo 5 in terms of how long it takes to earn some of the most expensive vehicles. But keep in mind one thing, this is during a time when GT5 isn't at its prime. This doesn't reflect the fact that GT5 and GT6 had daily login bonus boosts and quicker ways of earning credits through seasonal events during their active life. So during GT5's active life, it would have been at a higher place than it is now. So GT7 technically comes in last. This is the results, 10.9 hours as of version 1.06. After the patch was applied, that number jumped significantly to almost twice that, 17.8 hours. That is the difference between roughly 205 races versus 333 races. And this is despite the fact that GT7 isn't the worst of the Gran Turismos when it comes to the amount of credits you can earn per hour. And it is once again emphasized here that GT5 in its prime, the number of credits earned per hour would be significantly higher. So maybe we can see Gran Turismo 7 at 4th place in terms of credits earn rate. Even though it's not last in credits earn rate, it is still last in the amount of gameplay hours it takes to earn some of the most expensive cars, which further highlights just how much more grind they're demanding from players who want to earn vehicles through gameplay, and how much more money they're demanding from players who just want to buy them outright. Now, as if the microtransaction situation wasn't bad enough, something else that happened in parallel was that Gran Turismo 7 went offline for over 24 hours. What started out as server maintenance turned into an extended period where people could not access the game. And that is because the game has DRM such that even for single player modes, you're not able to access those unless you're logged in online, which means that when the game undergoes maintenance, it's not just that you can't play with other players through online multiplayer, is that you cannot play most of the game at all, which is just obviously very stupid when the single player mode has no effect on other players in the multiplayer environment. As highlighted by Kotaku here, PlayStation's big new exclusive has been nearly unplayable for over 24 hours. It is back now, but I'll get to that in a bit. Because so much of the game requires an online connection, including a great deal of single-player content, fans have effectively been locked out of Sony's latest console exclusive. On top of the fact that single-player DRM and single-player online requirements are just straight up unacceptable, the fact that the maintenance that turned into an outage went on for so much longer than expected didn't help matters. GT7 is back online after a 30-hour outage. Scrolling down, you'll find the details. A broken update resulted in longer than expected server maintenance yesterday, leaving players frustrated at the limited offline modes available in GT7. Much of GT7, including its career mode and multiplayer, was unplayable for 30 hours, and developer Polyphony Digital took more than 24 hours to provide an update on the problems after the maintenance extension. Polyphony Digital has now apologized for the problems, and the game is back online with a new and functional 1.08 update. Here's the apology in question on the official Gran Turismo website, published on March 18th, 2022. And on top of apologizing for the broken update that led to a much longer and extended period of maintenance where players could not access the vast majority of the game, they also did address the feedback surrounding the microtransactions, not in a satisfactory way, but they did have some words to share about that. So let's check out this apology. Immediately before the release of the 1.07 update, we discovered an issue where the game would not start properly in some cases on product versions for the PS4 and PS5. This was the reason for the delay. They released the correctional 1.0a update. Keep in mind that not once is the issue of requiring an online internet connection to even access single-player modes is ever addressed here. And then also an update on some event rewards have been adjusted. I wanted to explain the reasons for it and our plans going forward, referring to the diminished rewards in GT7 and the increase in vehicle prices that has just pissed people off. Here's the dumb explanation provided. In GT7, I'd like to have users enjoy lots of cars and races, even without microtransactions. Well, you've made that significantly more difficult, so thanks for that. At the same time, the pricing of cars is an important element that conveys their value and rarity, so I do think it's important for it to be linked with the real-world prices. Nobody plays video games so that real-world elements that are not particularly favorable can seep in. We play video games to fulfill fantasies that we can't in the real world, like owning cars or being able to drive cars that we would otherwise never be able to own or drive in the real world, because most of us cannot afford those cars in the real world. So for you to say that we want GT7 to reflect the real world value of cars in terms of how accessible they are, that defeats the whole purpose of a video game racing fantasy simulator. You cannot say in one breath, I want GT7 to feel like the real world where cars are so expensive and out of reach, and then say right after, I'd like to have users enjoy lots of cars and races even without microtransactions, when you've made that so much harder and for many people's schedules and lives just utterly untenable and impossible. The statement then says, I want to make GT7 a game in which you can enjoy a variety of cars lots of different ways, and if possible would like to try to avoid a situation where a player must mechanically keep replaying certain events over and over and over again. Is that why you remove the ability for people to sell cars to earn credits, or why you increased the price of cars or diminished the rate at which players can earn credits? None of what's in the game actually reflects what you say your intentions are. The statement does vaguely say that they are going to update players soon on feature adjustments. We will in time let you know the update plans for additional content, additional race events, and additional features that will constructively resolve this. It pains me that I can't explain the details regarding this at this moment, but we plan on continuing to revise GT7 so that as many players as possible can enjoy the game. We would really appreciate it if everyone could watch over the growth of GT7 from a somewhat longer term point of view. We'd really appreciate it if you in the short term would stop trying to screw players over and greedily nickel and dime them. How about that? Maybe if you do that first, we'd be more open-minded about the long-term future of GT7. But when instead you give out this vague statement that tells us nothing about how you plan to make this up to plenty of pissed players, what we're getting here seems like a vague statement that tries to make it so people ultimately will forget about these issues. This feels like your typical buy some time PR statement that aims to draw this issue out so they can continue to exploit the awful business scheme they have implemented in what should have been the pinnacle of Gran Turismo, but has instead turned into a whole frickin' circus show because of the clownish way in which the monetization in this game is being handled. Here's another article from news outlet Jalopnik, and I want to spotlight this article because it has a great quote scrolling down here. Aside from explaining everything wrong with the economy of GT7 right now and how exploitative it is, it points out, Yamauchi says that he believes it's important for cars to be linked with their real-world values, but we play games to exist in a world where we can drive these cars, or we can afford to, at least in a digital realm, drive these cars, simulate them enough so we can at least live out the fantasy of something that the majority of the world population will not be able to attain. That's the void that GT7 is supposed to fill, but instead they're trying to make it closer to the real life counterpart that we don't actually want because it makes it less accessible for people to be able to actually drive those cars. It's so ass backwards. What you really desire is a simulation of a greedy real-life world where corporations exploit their consumers. That's what you want to simulate in GT7. This Jalopnik article says at best, the solution is pretty obvious. Give the players more events, or make more of them pay out comparatively well to the ones people are grinding. Instead, Polyphony has gone in the opposite direction by curtailing the Fisherman's Ranch payout while begging the community to be patient for additional race events and additional features that will constructively resolve this. It's bold of Yamauchi to assume fans will have the patience to wait this out. Updates are actively eliminating players' best opportunities to earn credits, and it's an especially stinging slap to the face when the game was rendered unplayable for an entire day, for more than an entire day. As for what the community reaction has been like, well, I've already shown you the abysmal user score here that is aptly representative of how deceptive this game has been, how egregious it's been in its exploitation of customers. Beyond that, you've got content creators like Steve Alvarez Brown here who tweeted, as a matter of principle, I will never do a single microtransaction ever on GT7. The game has definitely got to a point whereby it's unreasonably time consuming for the average player to gain credits. Don't get me started on the roulette spins either. And then he concluded in a second tweet, even if you completely disregard microtransactions, the bottom line is that it takes stupid amounts of time to gain credits in the game. And comments below are all pretty much agreeing. And if you look at the Gran Turismo Twitter page where they talked about the extended server maintenance and talked about the latest patch, you can see, first of all, the ratio here, only 15, almost 1,600 likes versus 3,300 replies, and then people saying things like ridiculous credit changes, the way they nerfed rewards earnings. You nerfed it to force us to buy credits. We won't. How about you increase race payouts instead of decreasing them to force people into buying microtransactions? They didn't bother me till now, but now it's become a real issue. Fix this. People protesting by breaking the disc and whatnot. And then in the replies to this one right here, talking about additional elements to the server maintenance period and apologizing for the inconvenience. People like Pierre Schneider, who is at IGN, saying down for a day now. Hopefully it'll be back up for the weekend. We all knew the always on nature was going to bite us in the tailpipe. Basically, beyond criticism surrounding microtransactions, people are fed up with this trend of even making single player modes locked behind an internet connection, behind some DRM. Apologize harder than make at least some of it playable offline. I paid for this game and own the physical copy. Game is becoming a joke already. Feels like people finally understand the DRM criticisms. Gt7 down for hours today with 99% of the game completely unavailable. This online requirement has to end and not become the norm for single player content. John Limman from Digital Foundry chimed in and agreed about all of this, so on and so forth. It's become this whole fiasco, this PR nightmare for Sony and PlayStation. And Gran Turismo 7 is one of those classic racing game series that doesn't deserve this kind of treatment, that doesn't deserve its beloved legacy be tarnished like this, but greed often tends to blind corporations and executives in the wrong direction, a direction that may please investors in the short term but will have adverse effects in the long term. Sony, PlayStation, developers of Gran Turismo, reverse all of this crap. Make it enjoyable for players to progress through the game and earn cars. Make it reasonable. Don't give us this BS about for the players and play has no limit if this is how you're going to behave, if this is the kind of crap you're going to allow your developers to ship. Or at least that's one man's take on this whole issue. Gt7, a massive disappointment in the way it deceived customers and how the game was updated post-launch and post-reviews. So that's one man's take. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on this Gran Turismo 7 fiasco. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.